Good afternoon, beautiful people of planet Earth. Greetings from sacred space at Titania's realm. The time is 12:22 p.m. on Thursday, 4th of September 2025. The temperature is now 24 degrees and mostly sunny. It's clouded over a bit. I worried if I should rush the birdie boys in, but according to the Bureau of Meteorology, there's no rain expected today. Been known to be wrong before, but anyway, if it starts to rain, I'll rush out and bring them in, but I'm sure they'll be fine. Even if they did get caught out in the rain, it's warm outside, so it's not exactly life-threatening. But oh look, we've had a lovely time. Rati's come and done the cleaning. She's gone again. I still have all the dusting to do, which I'm dreading by the gods, but it's going to be a big undertaking, a very big undertaking. It takes me 2 days to fully dust and polish up this whole house. Actually, it takes me longer if I polish properly. All the timber furniture needs actually a good polishing. So, hasn't been done for a long time, to be honest. I've been a bit lazy. I've got to go out later and wash down my newly acquired spinning wheel, wash all the dirt and grime off it, and then give that a good oiling and sanding back the metal bits. So that was a job. Probably should have been done this morning actually, but I chose to read stories instead, and it'll get done though, because I'm excited about it and I want to try it out too. Try spinning some new fleece. Well, not new fleece, but fleece that I've pre-prepared. So I've resolved my earring issues, made them face the right way, and I'm happy about that. Had to glue them down and tweak them a bit. So I'm very happy. It's all very professional, happening in a far out way. Little bows singing out because the turkey's coming down. I put food out for the little power-headed rosellas, but they don't know that I put food out, so they didn't partake. But I bet you turkey buzzard's going to come up here and try and take all the food, in which case you'll see me dive out and rescue the food, because I've put quite a lot out, but he's a greedy little munchkin. He takes it all. Yes, he's making a beeline straight for the food. It's amazing how they know, isn't it? You must be able to smell it. Well, you'll see me. I'll just wait a few minutes, because rather than interrupt the story, I should probably dive bomb out and get that food in. Where is the little varmint? He's gone. He's hanging around, but he's gone away from the food. Can't be all that hungry today. He steals every last scrap of it. Well, it's not really stolen if I give it out for the wild birds, but he shouldn't really be eating the lorikeet food. It's hellishly expensive, and it's meant only for the lorikeets and maybe the rosellas. Right, what's going on there? He's back, looking very determined. He's back. It feels like, yes, he's here for the food. Right, I know, I'm onto you. You're a very annoying bird. You remind me of the road runner, and you make me feel like the Wile E. Coyote. Honestly, I'll be back. No, it's not for you. I'll leave you a little bit. You can have some, but not the whole lot, alright? It's not for you, little runner. Alright, here you go. Here's yours. Still have some. Honestly, all these wild birds here at Sacred Space are so bloody spoiled. I hate to think what will happen if, God forbid, I die or, upgrade my life and move away. They'd be devastated. Who would look after them like I look after them? No one. No one. And the new owners that would be living here would be wondering why all these wild birds strut around as if they're the pets and own the place. They'd be really quite freaked out, I suppose. I mean, I'm used to it because I harmonise with them here on my little titania's realm, but other humans would be like, what on earth is going on? Good. You can freak out. I wonder if the birds would notice if it was someone new though, and know that they wouldn't be quite as welcome. Oh, the grief they would probably feel. They really do grieve, animals and birds, believe it or not. Charlie grieved terribly when Beauregard died. She sat on the floor of her cage for a day, and I freaked out that she was going to die too. I really did. It wasn't all that many months after his death that she passed away. Oh no, wait a minute. A year and 5 months. But still, it was terrible to lose them so close together. Right. What's that little Kermie doing? I put an apple on his swing to encourage him to go on his new swing. So he's just sitting on the edge of it, staring at the apple, and watching the turkey take what lorikeet mix I left for him. Oh no, he's chewing on the apple. I want him to swing on the bloody swing. How can you make a pet bird swing when he doesn't want to? Oh, it's climbed off it now. He doesn't quite understand because it's so much larger than his other swing. He hasn't quite come to grips that it's meant to be fun for him. Fun, people of Earth. I suppose it's the equivalent of taking a toddler off a little tiny slide and putting them on a gigantic roller coaster though. He's going to have to wrap his little birdie brain around that. Right, anyway. Here's my baby. Here's my baby. We'll carry on reading part 1. Oh, it's now part 2, sorry, of chapter 10, A Warm Welcome. And don't worry, I'll commit this time. There's some really gorgeous birds coming to the garden, for which I'm easily distracted. But no, I'll stick to the mission at hand. Here we go, babies. Are you ready? Some of you have been ready all your lives. Right. Who can resist being ready when it comes to listening to The Hobbit being read by almost an actual hobbit? The hobbits are happening far out west, babies. Right. As soon as the raft of barrels came in sight, boats rowed out from the piles of the town, and voices hailed the raft steerers. Then ropes were cast and oars were pulled, and soon the raft was drawn out of the current of the forest river and towed away round the high shoulder of rock into the little bay of Lake Town. There it was moored not far from the shoreward head of the great bridge. Soon men would come out from the south and take some of the casks away, and others they would fill with goods they had brought to be taken back up the stream to the wood elves' home. In the meanwhile, the barrels were left afloat, while the elves of the raft and the boatmen went to feast in Lake Town. I've eaten all my chocolate and now I'm a bit devastated because I once more only had a little bit left. Tiny tantrum crisis. I am a chocoholic. I have limited powers over my chocoholism, which is why I avoid love addictions and any other kind of drug addictions, people. Once you have one addiction, they can translate into other addictions and it can be a cycle spiral into hell if you are not very, very careful. But I do have a major theobromine addiction and an oxytocin addiction, because who doesn't love real love when you can get it? Ah, Turkey, why are you back? I gave you food for yourself. Go on, get off there. Off, off. He's not even scared of me anymore. Do you want me to yell at you? Do you want me to do a hobbit stomp? Get down off there. Go on. Get down, get down. I need a spray bottle like you have for cats and dogs. Spray them with water. You'll probably get used to that too. He really doesn't care. He's just sitting up there, not caring in the slightest. Right, sorry about that. It just grinds my gears sometimes. I'm pretty sure that turkey was one of the babies I rescued from my cats. So it really does love me and thinks that I'm a bit special. But he's obsessed. He's obsessed and he's compulsive, that turkey. He doesn't take no for an answer. He's a bit of a bastard buzzard pest. Well, anyway. They would have been surprised if they could have seen what happened down by the shore after they had gone and the shades of night had fallen. First of all, a barrel was cut loose by Bilbo and pushed to the shore and opened. Groans came from inside, and out crept a most unhappy dwarf. Wet straw was in his bedraggled beard. He was so sore and stiff, so bruised and buffeted, he could hardly stand or stumble through the shallow water to lie groaning on the shore. He had a famished and a savage look, like a dog that had been chained and forgotten in a kennel for a week. Oh, who would do such an awful thing? Really, truly. I hate people who are cruel to animals. It was Thorin, but you could only have told it by his golden chain and by the colour of his now dirty and tattered sky blue hood with its tarnished silver tassel. It was some time before he would be even polite to the hobbit. Wonder if I should make a silver tassel to hang off my top hat. I've already got a big massive silver brooch with a Viking ship on it, so a tassel would be overkill. But in art, there is no overkill, there is only extravaganza, darlings. And when I dress up in my top hat, I'm a walking work of art. Right, anyway, it was some time before he would be even polite to the hobbit. Well, are you alive or are you dead? Asked Bilbo quite crossly. Perhaps he had forgotten that he had had at least one good meal more than the dwarfs, and also the use of his arms and legs, not to speak of a greater allowance of air. Are you still in prison, or are you free? If you want food, or if you want to go on with this silly adventure, it's yours after all, and not mine. You had better slap your arms and rub your legs and try and help me get the others out while there is a chance. Thorin, of course, saw the sense of this, so after a few more groans, he got up and helped the hobbit as well as he could. In the darkness, floundering in the cold water, they had a difficult and a very nasty job finding which were the right barrels. Knocking outside and calling, only discovered about 6 dwarfs that could answer. These were unpacked and helped ashore where they sat or lay, muttering and groaning. They were so soaked and bruised and cramped that they could hardly yet realise their release or be properly thankful for it. Dwalin and Balin were 2 of the most unhappy, and it was no good asking them to help. Byfor and Beaufort were less knocked about and drier, but they lay down and would do nothing. Fili and Kili, however, who were young for dwarfs. What do you want, Mr. Turkey Buzzard? What do you want from me? Companionship, attention, time, effort, sweet, sweet love. I wonder what he's doing up here, honestly. I would move the food, so I was really just being curious. Fili and Kili, however, who were young, the dwarfs, had also been packed more neatly with plenty of straw into smaller casks, came out more or less smiling with only a bruise or 2 and a stiffness that soon wore off. I hope I never smell the smell of apples again, said Fili. My tub was full of it. To smell apples everlastingly when you can scarcely move or are cold and sick with hunger is maddening. I could eat anything in the wide world now for hours on end, but not an apple. With the willing help of Fili and Kili, Thorin and Bilbo at last discovered the remainder of the company and got them out. Poor, fat Bombur was asleep or senseless. Dori, Nori, Ori, Owen and Glowen were waterlogged and seemed only half alive. They all had to be carried, one by one, and laid helpless on the shore. Well, here we are, said Thorin, and I suppose we ought to thank our stars and Mr. Baggins. I am sure he has a right to expect it, although I wish he could have arranged a more comfortable journey. Still, all very much at your service once more, Mr. Baggins. No doubt we shall feel properly grateful when we are fed and recovered. In the meantime, what next? I suggest Lake Town, said Bilbo. What else is there? Nothing else could, of course, be suggested. So, leaving the others, Thorin and Fili and Kili and the Hobbit went along the shore to the great bridge. There were guards at the head of it, but they were not keeping very careful watch, for it was so long since there had been any real need. Except for occasional squabbles about river tolls, they were friends with the wood elves. Other folk were far away, and some of the younger people in the town openly doubted the existence of any dragon in the mountain and laughed at the greybeards and gammers who said that they had seen him flying in the sky in their young days. That being so, it is not surprising that the guards were drinking and laughing by a fire in their hut, and did not hear the noise of the unpacking of the dwarfs or the footsteps of the full scouts. Excuse me. Their astonishment was enormous when Thorin Oakenshield stepped in through the door. "Who are you, and what do you want?" they shouted, leaping to their feet and groping for weapons. "Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, king under the mountain," said the dwarf in a loud voice, and he looked it, in spite of his torn clothes and draggled hood. The gold gleamed on his neck and waist. His eyes were dark and deep. "I have come back. I wish to see the master of your town." Then there was tremendous excitement. Some of the more foolish ran out of the hut as if they expected the mountain to go golden in the night and all the waters of the lake turn yellow right away. The captain of the guard came forward. "And who are these?" he asked, pointing to Fili, Kili and Bilbo. "The sons of my father's daughter," answered Thorin. "Fili and Kili of the race of Durin, and Mr. Baggins, who has also travelled with us out of the west." "If you come in peace, lay down your arms," said the captain. "We have none," said Thorin, and it was true enough. Their knives had been taken from them by the wood elves, and the great sword of Orcrist too. Bilbo had his short sword hidden as usual, but he said nothing about that. "We have no need of weapons, who return at last to our own as spoken of old, nor could we fight against so many. Take us to your master." "He is at feast," said the captain. "Then all the more reason for taking us to him," burst in Fili, who was getting impatient with these solemnities. "We are worn and famished after our long road, and we have sick comrades. Now make haste and let us have no more words, or your master will have something to say to you." "Follow me then," said the captain, and with 6 men about them, he led them over the bridge, through the gates, and into the marketplace of the town. Still could do with a little tweak, couldn't it? Still not quite facing forward. Another tiny little tweak. Yes. This was a wide circle of quiet water surrounded by the tall piles on which were built the greater houses, and by long wooden quays with many steps and ladders going down to the surface of the lake. From one great hall shone many lights, and there came the sound of many voices. They passed its doors and stood, blinking in the light, looking at long tables filled with folk. I am Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thrall, king under the mountain. I return, cried Thorin in a loud voice from the door, before the captain could say anything. All leaped to their feet. Where was I? Lost my spot. Ah, yes. The master of the town sprang from his great chair, but none rose in greater surprise than the raftsmen of the elves, who were sitting at the lower end of the hall. Pressing forward before the master's table, they cried, "These are prisoners of our king that have escaped, wandering vagabond dwarves, that could not give any good account of themselves, sneaking through the woods and molesting our people." "Is this true?" asked the master. As a matter of fact, he thought it far more likely than the return of the king under the mountain, if any such person had ever existed. "It is true that we were wrongfully waylaid by the Elven King and imprisoned without cause as we journeyed back to our own land," answered Thorin. "But lock nor bar may hinder the homecoming spoken of old, nor is this town in the Wood Elves' realm. I speak to the master of the town of the men of the lake, not to the raftmen of the king." Then the master hesitated and looked from one to the other. The Elven King was very powerful in those parts, and the master wished for no enmity with him, nor did he think much of old songs, giving his mind to trade and tolls, to cargoes and gold, to which habit he owed his position. Others were of different mind, however, and quickly the matter was settled without him. The news had spread from the doors of the hall like fire through all the town. People were shouting inside the hall and outside it. The quays were thronged with hurrying feet. Some began to sing snatches of old songs concerning the return of the king under the mountain, that it was Thrall's grandson, not Thrall himself, that had come back did not bother them at all. Others took up the song, and it rolled loud and high over the lake. The king beneath the mountains, the king of carven stone, the lord of silver fountains, shall come into his own. His crown shall be upholden, his harp shall be restrung, his halls shall echo golden, to songs of yore resung. The woods shall wave on mountains, and grass beneath the sun. His wealth shall flow in fountains. and the rivers golden run. The streams shall run in gladness, the lakes shall shine and burn. All sorrow fail and sadness at the mountain king's return. So they sang, all very like that, only there was a great deal more to it. And there was much shouting as well as the music of harps and of fiddles mixed up with it. Indeed, such excitement had not been known in the town in the memory of the oldest grandfather. The wood elves themselves began to wonder greatly and even to be afraid. They did not know, of course, how Thorin had escaped, and they began to think their king might have made a serious mistake. As for the master, he saw there was nothing else for it but to obey the general clamour, for the moment at any rate, and to pretend to believe that Thorin was what he said. So he gave up to him his own great chair and sat Fili and Kili beside him in places of honour. Even Bilbo was given a seat at the high table, and no explanation of where he came in. No songs had alluded to him, even in the obscurest way, was asked for in the general bustle. Soon afterwards, the other dwarfs were brought into the town amid scenes of astonishing enthusiasm. They were all doctored and fed and housed and pampered in the most delightful and satisfactory fashion. A large house was given up to Thorin and his company. Boats and rowers were put at their service, and crowds sat outside and sang songs all day, or cheered if any dwarf showed so much as his nose. Some of the songs were old ones, but some of them were quite new and spoke confidently of the sudden death of the dragon and of cargoes of rich presents coming down the river to Lake Town. These were inspired largely by the master, and they did not particularly please the dwarfs, but in the meantime they were well contented, and they quickly grew fat and strong again. Indeed, within a week they were quite recovered, fitted out in fine cloth of their proper colours, with beards combed and trimmed, and proud steps. Thorin looked and walked as if his kingdom was already regained and Smaug chopped up into little pieces. Then, as he had said, the dwarf's good feeling towards the little hobbit grew stronger every day. There were no more groans or grumbles. They drank his health, and they patted him on the back, and they made a great fuss at him, which was just as well, for he was not feeling particularly cheerful. He had not forgotten the look of the mountain, nor the thought of the dragon, and he had beside a shocking cold. For 3 days he sneezed and coughed, and he could not go out. And even after that, his speeches at banquets were limited to, "Thank you very much." In the meanwhile, the wood elves had gone back up the forest river with their cargoes, and there was great excitement in the king's palace. I have never heard what happened to the chief of the guards and the butler. Nothing, of course, was ever said about keys or barrels while the dwarves stayed in Lake Town, and Bilbo was careful never to become invisible. Still, I dare say, more was guessed than was known, though doubtless Mr. Baggins remained a bit of a mystery. In any case, the king knew now the dwarf's errand, or thought he did, and he said to himself, "Very well, we'll see. No treasure will come back through Mirkwood without my having something to say in the matter, but I expect they will all come to a bad end and serve them right." He, at any rate, did not believe in dwarves fighting and killing dragons like Smaug, and he strongly suspected attempted burglary or something like it, which shows he was a wise elf and wiser than the men of the town, though not quite right, as we shall see in the end. He sent out his spies about the shores of the lake and as far northward toward the mountain as they would go, and waited. At the end of a fortnight, Thorin began to think of departure. While the enthusiasm still lasted in the town, was the time to get help. It would not do to let everything cool down without delay. So he spoke to the master and his counsellors, and said that soon he and his company must go on towards the mountain. Then, for the first time, the master was surprised and a little frightened, and he wondered if Thorin was, after all, really a descendant of the old kings. He had never thought that the dwarves would actually dare to approach Smaug, but believed they were frauds who would sooner or later be discovered and be turned out. He was wrong. Thorin, of course, was really the grandson of the king under the mountain, and there is no knowing what a dwarf will not dare and do for revenge and the recovery of his own. But the master was not sorry at all to let them go. They were expensive to keep, and their arrival had turned things into a long holiday in which business was at a standstill. Let them go and bother Smaug and see how he welcomes them, he thought. Certainly. Oh, Thorin, Thrain's son, Thor's son, was what he said. You must, that should be Thrall, War's son. A big typo there. You must claim your own. The hour is at hand, spoken of old. What help we can offer shall be yours, and we trust to your gratitude when your kingdom is regained. So one day, although autumn was now getting far on, and the winds were cold, and the leaves were falling fast, 3 large boats left Lake Town, laden with rowers, dwarfs, Mr. Baggins, and many provisions. Horses and ponies had been sent round by circuitous paths to meet them at their appointed landing place. The master and his counsellors bade them farewell from the great steps of the town hall that went down to the lake. People sang on the quays and out of windows. The white oars dipped and splashed, and off they went north, up the lake, on the last stage of their long journey. The only person thoroughly unhappy was Bilbo. I hear voices of men, but I see no one. Well, not my monkey, not my circus. Bit odd, because it sounds like they're close by. Oh, I think it's my neighbour while I'm talking on the phone. So it's all good. All good. So we'll continue on with chapter 11, On the Doorstep. See how many pages it is. Yes. In 2 days going, they rode right up the long lake and passed out into the river running, and now they could all see the lonely mountain towering grim and tall before them. The stream was strong and their going slow. At the end of the 3rd day, some miles up the river, they drew in to the left or western bank and disembarked. Here they were joined by the horses, with other provisions and necessaries, and the ponies for their own use that had been sent to meet them. They packed what they could on the ponies, and the rest was made into a store under a tent. But none of the men of the town would stay with them, even for the night, so near the shadow of the mountain. Not at any rate until the songs have come true, said they. It was easier to believe in the dragon, less easy to believe in Thorin in these wild parts. Indeed, their stores had no need of any guard, for all the land was desolate and empty. So their escort left them, making off swiftly down the river and the shoreward paths, although the night was already drawing on. They spent a cold and lonely night, and their spirits fell. The next day they set out again. Balin and Bilbo rode behind, each leading another pony heavily laden beside him. The others were some way ahead, picking out a slow road, for there were no paths. They made northwest, slanting away from the river running, and drawing ever nearer and nearer to a great spur of the mountain that was flung out southwards towards them. It was a weary journey and a quiet and stealthy one. There was no laughter or song or sound of harps, and the pride and hopes which had stirred in their hearts at the singing of old songs by the lake died away to a plodding gloom. They knew that they were drawing near to the end of their journey, and that it might be a very horrible end. The land about them grew bleak and barren, though once, as Thorin told them, it had been green and fair. There was little grass, and before long there was neither bush nor tree, and only broken and blackened stumps, to speak of ones long vanished. They were come to the desolation of the dragon, and they were come at the waning of the year. They reached the skirts of the mountain all the same, without meeting any danger or any sign of the dragon other than the wilderness he had made about his lair. The mountain lay dark and silent before them, and ever higher above them. They made their first camp on the western side of the great southern spur, which ended in a height called Ravenhill. On this there had been an old watch post, but they dared not climb it yet. It was too exposed. Before setting out to search the western spurs of the mountain for the hidden door on which all their hopes rested, Thorin sent out a scouting expedition to spy out the land to the south where the front gate stood. For this purpose he chose Balin and Fili and Kili, and with them went Bilbo. They marched under the grey and silent cliffs to the feet of Ravenhill. There the river, after winding a wide loop over the valley of Dale, turned from the mountain on its road to the lake, flowing swift and noisily. Its bank was bare and rocky, tall and steep above the stream, and, gazing out from it over the narrow water, foaming and splashing among many boulders, they could see in the wide valley shadowed by the mountain's arms the grey ruins of ancient houses, towers and walls. There lies all that is left of Dale, said Balin. The mountain sides were green with woods, and all the sheltered valley rich and pleasant in the days when the bells rang in that town. He looked both sad and grim as he said this. He had been one of Thorin's companions on the day the dragon came. They did not dare to follow the river much further towards the gate, but they went on beyond the end of the southern spur until, lying hidden behind a rock, they could look out and see the dark cavernous opening in a great cliff wall between the arms of the mountain. Out of it the waters of the running river sprang, and out of it too there came a steam and a dark smoke. Nothing moved in the waste save the vapour and the water, and every now and again a black and ominous crow. The only sound was the sound of the stony water, and every now and again the harsh croak of a bird. Balin shuddered. "Let us return," he said. "We can do no good here, and I don't like these dark birds. They look like spies of evil." "The dragon is still alive and in the hills under the mountain then, or I imagine so from the smoke," said the hobbit. "That does not prove it," said Balin, "though I don't doubt you are right. But he might be gone away some time, or he might be lying out on the mountain side, keeping watch, and still I expect smokes and steams would come out of the gates. All the halls within must be filled with his foul reek." With such gloomy thoughts, followed ever by croaking crows above them, they made their weary way back to the camp. Only in June they had been guests in the fair house of Elrond, and though autumn was now crawling towards winter, that pleasant time now seemed years ago. They were alone in the perilous waste, without hope of further help. They were at the end of their journey, but, as far as ever it seemed, from the end of their quest, none of them had much spirit left. Now, strange to say, Mr. Baggins had more than the others. Little boy. I just love it when he sings, it's gorgeous. Kermie's just staring at him like this. "Kermie, why aren't you singing your songs?" Hmm? He would often borrow Thorin's map and gaze at it, pondering over the runes and the message of the moon letters Elrond had read. It was he that made the dwarves begin the dangerous search on the western slopes for the secret door. They moved their camp then to a long valley, narrower than the great dale in the south, where the gates of the river stood and walled with lower spurs of the mountain. Two of these here thrust forward west from the main mass in long, steep-sided ridges that fell ever downwards towards the plain. On this western side there were fewer signs of the dragon's marauding feet. but there was some grass for their ponies. From this western camp, shadowed all day by cliff and wall, until the sun began to sink towards the forest, day by day they toiled in parties, searching for paths up the mountainside. If the map was true, somewhere high above the cliff, at the valley's head, must stand the secret door. Day by day they came back to their camp without success. But at last, unexpectedly, they found what they were seeking. Feely and Keely and the Hobbit went back one day down the valley and scrambled among the tumbled rocks at its southern corner. About midday, creeping behind a great stone that stood alone like a pillar, Bilbo came on what looked like rough steps going upwards. Following these excitedly, he and the dwarves found traces of a narrow track, often lost, often rediscovered, that wandered on to the top of the southern ridge and brought them at last to a still narrower ledge which turned north across the face of the mountain. Looking down, they saw that they were at the top of the cliff at the valley's head and were gazing down on their own camp below. Silently, clinging to the rocky wall on their right, they went in single file along the ledge till the wall opened and they turned into a little steep walled bay, grassy floored, still and quiet. Its entrance, which they had found, could not be seen from below because of the overhang of the cliff, nor from further off because it was so small that it looked like a dark crack and no more. It was not a cave, and was open to the sky above, but at its inner end a flat wall rose up that, in the upper part, close to the ground, was as smooth and upright as mason's work, but without a joint or crevice to be seen. No sign was there of post or lintel or threshold, nor any sign of bar or bolt or keyhole. Yet they did not doubt that they had found the door at last. They bet on it, they thrust and pushed at it. They implored it to move. They spoke fragments of broken spells of opening, and nothing stirred. At last, tired out, they rested on the grass at its feet, and then at evening began their long climb down. There was excitement in the camp that night. In the morning they prepared to move once more. Only Beaufort and Bombur were left behind to guard the ponies and such stores as they had brought with them from the river. The others went down the valley and up the newly found path and so to the narrow ledge. Along this they could carry no bundles or packs, so narrow and breathless was it, with a fall of 150 feet beside them on the sharp rocks below. But each of them took a good coil of rope wound tight about his waist. And so at last, without mishap, they reached the little grassy bay. Everyone's happy today. Everyone. There they made their third camp, hauling up what they needed from below with their ropes. Down the same way they were able occasionally to lower one of the more active dwarfs such as Kili, to exchange such news as there was, or to take a share in the guard below, while Beaufort was hauled up to the higher camp. Bombor would not come up either the rope or the path. "I am too fat for such fly walks," he said. "I should turn dizzy and tread on my beard, and then you would be 13 again. And the knotted ropes are too slender for my weight." Luckily for him, that was not true, as you will see. In the meanwhile, some of them explored the ledge beyond the opening and found a path that led higher and higher onto the mountain, but they did not dare to venture very far that way, nor was there much use to it. Out up there silence reigned, broken by no bird or sound except that of the wind in the crannies of stone. They spoke low and never called or sang, for danger brooded in every rock. The ones who were busy with the secret of the door had no more success. They were too eager to trouble about the runes or the moon letters, but tried without resting to discover where exactly in the smooth face of the rock the door was hidden. They had brought picks and tools of many sorts from Lake Town, and at first they tried to use these. But when they struck the stone, the handles splintered and jarred their arms cruelly, and the steel heads broke or bent like lead. Mining work, they saw clearly, was no good against the magic that had shut this door, and they grew terrified too of the echoing noise. Bilbo found, sitting on the doorstep, lonesome and wearisome. There was not a doorstep, of course, really, but they used to call the little grassy space between the wall and the opening the doorstep in fun, remembering Bilbo's words long ago at the unexpected party in his hobbit hole, when he said they could sit on the doorstep till they thought of something, and sit and think they did, or wandered aimlessly about and glummer and glummer. They became. Their spirits had risen a little at the discovery of the path, but now they sank into their boots, and yet They would not give way or go away. The hobbit was no longer much brighter than the dwarfs. He would do nothing but sit with his back to the rock face and stare away west through the opening, over the cliff, over the wide lands, to the black wall of Mirkwood, and to the distances beyond, in which he sometimes thought he could catch glimpses of the misty mountains, small and far. Excuse me. If the dwarves asked him what he was doing, he answered, "You said sitting on the doorstep and thinking would be my job, not to mention getting inside. So I am sitting and thinking." But I am afraid he was not thinking much of the job, but of what lay beyond the blue distance, the quiet western land, and the hill, and his hobbit hole under it. A large grey stone lay in the centre of the grass, and he stared moodily at it or watched the great snails. They seemed to love the little shut-in bay with its walls of cool rock, and there were many of them, of huge size, crawling slowly and stickily along its sides. "Tomorrow begins the last week of autumn," said Thorin one day. "And winter comes after autumn," said By-Ful. "And next year after that," said Dwalin, "and our beards will grow till they hang down the cliff to the valley before anything happens here. What is our burglar doing for us? Since he has got an invisible ring and ought to be a specially excellent performer now, I am beginning to think he might go through the front gate and spy things out a bit." Bilbo heard this. The dwarves were on the rocks just above the enclosure where he was sitting, and, "Good gracious," he thought, "so that is what they are beginning to think, is it? Is it always poor me that has to get them out of their difficulties, at least since the wizard left? Whatever am I going to do? I might have known that something dreadful would happen to me in the end. I don't think I could bear to see the unhappy Valley of Dale again. And as for that steaming gate—" That night he was very miserable and hardly slept. Next day the dwarves all went wandering off in various directions. Some were exercising the ponies down below, some were roving about the mountainside. All day Bilbo sat gloomily in the grassy bay gazing at the stone, or out west through the narrow opening. He had a queer feeling that he was waiting for something. "Perhaps the wizard will suddenly come back today," he thought. If he lifted his head, he could see a glimpse of the distant forest. As the sun turned west, there was a gleam of yellow upon its far roof, as if the light caught the last pale leaves. Soon he saw the orange ball of the sun sinking towards the level of his eyes. He went to the opening, and there, pale and faint, was a thin new moon above the rim of earth. At that very moment he heard a sharp crack behind him. Buzzed by a tiny fly. Odd. There on the grey stone in the grass was an enormous thrush, nearly coal black, its pale yellow breast freckled with dark spots. Crack! It had caught a snail and was knocking it on the stone. Crack! Crack! Suddenly Bilbo understood. Forgetting all danger, he stood on the ledge and hailed the dwarfs, shouting and waving. Those that were nearest came tumbling over the rocks and as fast as they could along the ledge to him, wondering what on earth was the matter. The others shouted to be hauled up the ropes, except Bombur, of course. He was asleep. Quickly Bilbo explained. They all fell silent, the hobbits standing by the grey stone, and the dwarves with wagging beards watching impatiently. The sun sank lower and lower, and their hopes fell. It sank into a belt of reddened cloud and disappeared. The dwarves groaned but little. Bobo stood almost without moving. Like my little Bo started singing just when you said, Bobo. The little moon was dipping to the horizon. Evening was coming on. Then, suddenly, when their hope was lowest, a red ray of the sun escaped like a finger through a rent in the cloud. A gleam of light came straight through the opening into the bay and fell on the smooth rock face. The old thrush, who had been watching from a high perch with beady eyes and head cocked to one side, gave a sudden trill. There was a loud crack. A flake of rock split from the wall and fell. A hole appeared suddenly about 3 feet from the ground. Quickly, trembling lest the chance should fade, the dwarves rushed to the rock and pushed in vain. The key! The key! Cried Bilbo. Where is Thorin? Thorin hurried up. The key! Shouted Bilbo. The key that went with the map. Try it now while there is still time. Then Thorin stood up and drew the key on its chain from round his neck. He put it into the hole. It fitted and it turned. Snap! The gleam went out. The sun sank and the moon was gone, and evening sprang into the sky. Now they all pushed together, and slowly a part of the rock wall gave way. Long, straight cracks appeared and widened. A door 5 feet high and 3 broad, was outlined, and slowly, without a sound, swung inwards. It seemed as if darkness flowed out like a vapour from the hill in the mountainside, and deep darkness in which nothing could be seen lay before their eyes, a yawning mouth leading in and down. And thus concludes chapter 11. And I shall come back tomorrow with chapter 12. And yes, we shall do that because I'm quite tired now, people of Earth. And my chest is actually aching and my lungs are feeling kind of suppressed and oppressed and depressed, and might sit out in the sun with my little birdies a bit before I bring them back in, because the weather's become a bit changeable. And I've got to drive down to the local opportunity shop and deliver my old kind of, well, it's still operational, but I don't need another chair to clutter up this house, so I'll give the less perfect chair to charity, and it's still usable, so someone else might get some use out of it for a while longer. And I'm very happy with my new second-hand chairs, very happy indeed, and with my new spinning wheel, which I need to get out and clean. So yes, I might bring the birdie boys inside, drop off that desk chair and some other stuff I've got in my car that I've been meaning to drop off for days, and then come back and work on that lovely spinning wheel if I'm not too tired. So there we go. This would be from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm.